democracynow.org, The War and Peace Report. I'm Amy Goodman. It's the economy, stupid. As President Obama faces devastating unemployment, foreclosure, and bankruptcy rates with no end in sight, he's begun a 10-week campaign around the country leading up to the November midterm elections. On Wednesday, he's headed to Cleveland, where he's expected to unveil a new stimulus package that includes a $200 billion tax break, giving businesses an incentive to buy new equipment. On Labor Day, Obama spoke in Milwaukee, Wisconsin, where he proposed a $50 billion boost in federal spending to rebuild roads, railways, and runways. With the official unemployment rate near 10% and the unofficial rate far higher, particularly among young people and communities of color, Obama vowed that his new proposal would create new jobs immediately.
Today, I am announcing a new plan for rebuilding and modernizing America's roads and rails and runways for the long term. I want America to have the best infrastructure in the world. We used to have the best infrastructure in the world. We can have it again. I believe this with every fiber of my being. America cannot have a strong, growing economy without a strong, growing middle class, and the chance for everybody, no matter how humble their beginnings, to join that middle class.
In the midst of his speech, Obama departed from his script to address how his critics on Capitol Hill might characterize him.
That's been at the heart of what we've been doing over these last 20 months, building our economy on a new foundation so that our middle class doesn't just survive this crisis. I want it to thrive. I want it to be stronger than it was before. And over the last 2 years, that's meant taking on some powerful interests. Some powerful interests who had been dominating the agenda in Washington for a very long time, and they're not always happy with me. They talk about me like a dog. That's not in my prepared remarks, it's just, but it's true.
While the president was stumping in Milwaukee, Wisconsin Senator Russ Feingold was 70 miles away in his hometown of Janesville at his own Labor Day rally. Feingold, who's running for a fourth term, is facing competition this time from his Republican challenger Ron Johnson, a millionaire business executive who's never run for public office. For more, we go to Madison, Wisconsin. We're joined by John Nichols, the Washington correspondent for The Nation magazine, author of several books. He maintains the blog The Beat at thenation.com. John, welcome to Democracy Now! Tell us what's happening in Wisconsin. Actually now seen as a bellwether. Russ Feingold has really not been in danger before, except when he, when he first ran for Senate.
Well, what's going on in Wisconsin is what's really going on in most of the upper Midwest. And that is that while we haven't necessarily hit quite as high unemployment rates as some other parts of the country, the upper Midwest has suffered from really severe deindustrialization. We've lost a lot of our best jobs in states like Wisconsin, Minnesota, Illinois, Indiana, Ohio, Michigan. And so there's a great deal of discomfort, and that has ricocheted hard against the Democrats. There's simply no question that President Obama came to Milwaukee on Monday, Labor Day, because he thinks that this is really one of the places where the 2010 election cycle will be decided. Obama was in Milwaukee just 2 weeks ago, so he's kind of making this a regular stop. The problem, or the great challenge, is, though, that what people are really concerned about is that unemployment rate and frankly, the deindustrialization. And very little of what President Obama said yesterday is necessarily going to inspire quick confidence about bringing those unemployment numbers down.
Mm-hmm. Talk about the real unemployment numbers. I mean, when they talk about 9.6%, when you're talking about young people, we're talking in the range of, 35%. Communities of color and young people, put that together, we're talking over 50%.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, it's the unemployment figures that come out at the beginning of every month are a complete fantasy. They were restructured several decades ago to make presidents look better. But the reality is that the Department of Labor does bring out a figure where it includes people who have given up on looking for work, and that's literally millions and millions of people, as well as people who are severely underemployed. Those are folks who, they may work a couple hours a week, maybe 10 hours a week, but they don't begin to have the level of employment that would allow them to support their families or have any kind of security. When you add those numbers in, nationwide, the United States has roughly a 17% unemployment rate. Now, I want to underline that. 17%. That's 1 in 6 Americans unemployed. Now, when you take that into your inner cities, into some rural areas, and also when you look at people under 30, those numbers begin to skyrocket. And the really scary thing, Amy, is that in many communities, including the community where Barack Obama was speaking yesterday, Milwaukee, you have some areas of the city, some areas of the metro, where people have been unemployed at those levels, not just for the last 2 years, but in some cases, decades of systemic high unemployment, going well into the double digits. So what we're really seeing here is a situation where, and it's not all Barack Obama's fault, certainly, but we're seeing a situation where this president is frankly facing the long-term concern about a number of patterns in this country that have contributed to unemployment. First off, of course, deindustrialization. We're literally shutting factories at a very steady rate in this country. But second, and I think perhaps just as important, we haven't begun to think about allowing our older workers to retire at a reasonable time. In most countries in the world, when you get to the mid to late 50s, you're starting to think about retirement. In the United States, our Social Security system is set up basically to force people to work well into their 60s. Now there's talk about even putting the retirement age higher. Now, what that does is force older workers to stay on jobs, and that creates fewer and fewer openings, especially in hard times, for young workers to start their employment. And so we've got a lot of problems in this country that haven't been addressed. Barack Obama yesterday talked about a few things that certainly sound good, but it doesn't begin to get to the core of these long-term unemployment issues.
You wrote a piece, John, called "Obama Should Borrow a Page from FDR this Labor Day." What should he do?
Look, the thing that FDR did, interestingly enough, in the state of Wisconsin 2 years into his presidency, on an almost exactly parallel date, was to give one of the great speeches of his presidency. And what he said was, look, we're 2 years into a new presidency. Times are hard. Things have not improved as quickly as folks want to. But let me explain to you why that is. And then FDR laid out basically a history lesson in which he said there has always been a struggle between a privileged few and the great mass of Americans. The 1932 election, Roosevelt said, was the point at which the great mass of Americans demanded change. But the privileged few were going to fight very, very hard. And he really laid out an us-against-them struggle. He made it very, very clear that people had to choose which side they were on. It was a terrific speech, and it's the sort of speech, in my mind, that Obama needs to give. He needs to make it clear not just that Republicans are saying no for some sort of partisan reason, but that there is a long-term history of elites in this country saying no to changes that might make for a more equitable economy and frankly, that might address